Tess Lampert, and we're going to talk about mezcal and other things.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
So Tess, how do you get into mezcal?
That's a great question. So my answer is probably a little bit of a cliche at this point, but it's the truth. So it's always my answer. And that is, I really feel like mezcal found me.
Okay.
And I just stumbled upon it haphazardly. It had always been on my radar. I always liked tequila, and then once I became aware of mezcal in college, I drank whatever I could get my hands on, which was not very good quality. But I drank it nevertheless. And then I found myself in Oaxaca some years later. No plans, by myself for a little over a month, and I happened to get introduced to all these different mezcaleros from brands that we all know and love these days. And so I really just stumbled upon it, and the great thing about that for me is I learned mezcal through the eyes of the Mexican families who produce it, the people who grow the agaves and make the mezcal. I learned about it from that point of view rather than from behind the bar, which is what my professional industry is on this side of the border.
Okay. And how's your experience now with mezcal? I'm sure you've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, I would say for about four or 5 years, it's been a huge part of my life. Once mezcal kind of got its claws in me, it really didn't let go, and I struggled with that, and I have finally come to accept that it's a part of my life, whether or not it's a hobby or a profession, something I care a great deal about. And because I learned it from the Mexican producer perspective, it's been a little challenging for me to come back to the United States and international perspective of bartenders and even beverage writers who want to position it as the new hot trend or the interesting beverage of choice, when it really has this huge cultural significance and rich history behind it that way too often gets ignored or glossed over in a few words.
And what's your take on mezcal? Like, how do you see mezcal?
Yeah, so for me personally, it's a spiritual thing for me. If I have some sort of prayer or ritual, it will usually involve mezcal. Whenever I'm drinking mezcal, I always am mindful to work in that element of spirituality. And it's also something that can be a way to share with other people emotionally. I won't just say joy and happiness and fun, because it's sadness and depth and connection. It's a way to connect with other people and to connect cultures and to spread knowledge of cultures that deserve a little bit more attention.
Usually when you're drinking mezcal or when you want to drink mezcal, what's your favorite mezcal when it comes to that?
My favorite mezcal to drink at any given time is always the one that's in front of me.
Okay.
That's the best one.
That's a good answer, yes.
But it depends. It really depends on my mood. And for a while, for years, and I still do it to some extent, if I'm in a certain mood, and I don't necessarily know. I would consider myself more knowledgeable than most of the people that I'm surrounded by in New York, but by no means an expert. So if I am really sad and I want a mezcal to lift my spirits, or maybe I want to drink some mezcal to enhance my creativity, I got into the habit of asking my friends in Mexico what they recommended, and through that I learned which varieties to go to for different effects and to suit different moods. And even now at home, I have certain bottles that I use for certain occasions. So if I'm having a toast in honor of someone who's passed, I have a very specific mezcal that I go to. Whereas if I'm pairing with chocolate, I have a very specific variety that I go to. And so it really is highly dependent on my mood and what I'm going for.
Okay. And the last question, what would you recommend to the people that is getting to know mezcal?
Wonderful question. A couple of things.
Okay.
The first thing I'll recommend is to focus on espadín,
Espadín.
the variety.
Yeah.
We tend to overlook it, especially here in New York. People want to be up on whatever the trend is, and right now the trend is rare varieties, single varieties, wild agaves, and because of that, they're actually being over-farmed to the point of extinction in some cases in Mexico, which is certainly not what we want. But aside from that, you can learn so much from just focusing on espadín. It's really a good benchmark. You can learn about the terroir of agave through espadín, and you can discover different styles of mezcal, different regions of mezcal. And they're often more accessible. There's more of them on the market. They tend to be more affordable. So if you're just getting into mezcal, I would stick to those and also try and talk to people that you think know about mezcal, whether it's the person who works at a brand or behind the bar. Those people will give you their knowledge. They're happy to share with you everything they know. And through that, you'll be able to grow your own palate and learn about your own preferences.
Yeah. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, I would say the most important aspect of drinking mezcal is being able to appreciate it.
Okay.
So just like everything else wonderful in life, it's great to have wonderful things in your life, but being able to appreciate them to the fullest extent is what makes it truly wonderful. So anytime you drink mezcal, don't forget about the people behind it, the person who made it, the families that went into every aspect of that, and really tie that into the flavors and just open your heart, open your mind, and try to appreciate it to the fullest extent. And you'll get the most benefit that way.
Awesome, Tess. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Did you it?
Goodbye.